My name doesn't matter. I'm just one of many guards working at the DSS facility in Abuja. Some of us have been here for years. We see things the public doesn't. Things that never make it to the news. This place is not a normal prison. It's cold, not just because of the air, but because of the feeling. There's no noise here. No shouting. No singing. Just silence. Thick silence. Even the walls feel like they're watching you. We have important people locked up here. Men who were once free, rich, or famous, now sitting behind steel doors. But one man stands out more than the rest. His name is Nnamdi Kanu. The name alone stirs different reactions. Some people see him as a hero, a voice for justice. Others call him a troublemaker. But here, inside these grey walls, he's just another inmate. He stays in a special cell, watched day and night. His movements are limited. No visitors except a few lawyers. Even we, the guards, are told not to speak to him unless necessary. Konu is not a loud man inside here. Not like in the videos people used to watch online. In this place, he keeps to himself. Most times he sits quietly, reading or writing. Other times, he just closes his eyes and prays. You can tell he's thinking deeply. Always thinking. Even without words, he carries something heavy. I had watched him for weeks without saying more than a few words to him. My job was simple: open the door when told, close it when done, and report any strange movement. That was all. No friendship. No opinion. Just follow orders. That's why what happened that morning shocked me. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I had just returned from a short break, and the morning shift was quiet. I was doing my routine check when a senior officer, one of the high-ranking ones who rarely talks to junior guards like me, walked toward me. He was holding a brown envelope in his hand. Not the kind we use here for files. This one looked different. Thicker. Hand-sealed. He looked me in the eye and said in a low voice, "This came through a diplomatic channel. From outside Nigeria. Your job is to give it to Konu directly. Don't delay. And stay close. Watch how he reacts." I was surprised. "From where, sir?" I asked without thinking. He glanced around, then said, "Burkina Faso. From someone called Captain Ibrahim Traoré." That name didn't mean much to me at first. I had heard it on the news a few times, the young soldier who became president of Burkina Faso. They say he's strong, fearless, and doesn't bow to foreign powers. But what business did he have with a man locked up in Nigeria? I didn't ask more questions. In our line of work, too many questions can end a career. So I took the envelope, signed the record book, and walked down the hallway toward Kanu's cell. As I approached the cell, I felt something strange. Maybe it was the quietness, or maybe it was the weight of the envelope in my hand. I had delivered letters before, from lawyers, sometimes from family, but never anything from a foreign leader. I stopped in front of the steel door. There's a small opening at the bottom of the door, just big enough to pass food or small items. I bent slightly and slid the envelope through the slot. "Sir," I said quietly, "a letter came for you." Konu was sitting on his mat, legs crossed, reading a worn-out book. He looked up slowly. His eyes moved to the envelope on the floor. He didn't rush. He stared at it for a few seconds, then picked it up. He turned it around, looked at the seal, then tore it open carefully. I stood back, arms crossed, pretending not to watch too closely. But I couldn't help it. I was curious. As he read the letter, I noticed something change in his face. His expression, always calm and unreadable, shifted. Slightly. He blinked a few times, then looked at the paper again. He didn't say anything yet, but I knew this was no ordinary letter. Something in those words had touched him deeply. I stood still, waiting. I didn't know then, but that letter was going to change something in him. Maybe even in me. And that's how it began, a normal day, a silent hallway, and a letter from a soldier in Burkina Faso that would shake the heart of a man locked far away from the world. I stayed standing in front of his cell, waiting. At that moment, I wasn't just a guard. I felt like a witness to something bigger than me. Nnamdi Kanu was holding a letter from someone most people in this country had only heard about in the news, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier leading a revolution in Burkina Faso. Konu read the letter once. He didn't react too much at first. His eyes just moved slowly across the paper. But then he read it again. Slower this time. His fingers gripped the paper tighter. His shoulders tensed slightly. Then he looked up, straight at me. "Who gave this to you?" he asked. His voice was calm, but I could feel something underneath it. Not fear. Not anger. Something like shock, quiet, serious shock. I told him what I knew. "Sir, it was handed over by one of our senior officers. They said it came directly from Burkina Faso. From President Ibrahim Traoré." Konu shook his head gently, as if trying to understand what he had just heard. He lowered his eyes back to the letter. For a few moments, he didn't say a word. He just stared at the words, lips moving slightly as he read over parts again. Then he whispered, not to me, but to himself. "So, the fire is spreading." He sat down fully, legs crossed on his mat, and placed the letter on his lap. His fingers traced the paper as if it were something precious. He didn't smile, but there was something different in his face, a kind of light I hadn't seen there before. I didn't know what was in the letter yet, but whatever it was, it had touched a deep part of him. Then he looked up again, this time his voice clearer. "You know what he said?" he asked, holding the letter slightly up. I shook my head. "No, sir." Konu leaned back slightly, eyes still fixed on the letter. Then he began to speak, slowly, like someone trying to explain a dream. He said Africa is in a battle, but not just with guns. It's a battle of minds, of hearts. He said the enemy is not only outside, but within, the people who fear change and block freedom. He looked down again, eyes scanning another line. Then continued. He said he has been watching. That even from far away, he sees what's going on in Nigeria, in Biafra, in my cell. He said that I should not give up. That prison is not the end of the road. It is just one stop in the long journey. I was silent. There was nothing for me to say. He kept talking, more like he was thinking out loud. He said that the time is near. That young Africans are rising. That the world is shaking, and they don't want Africa to wake up. That's why they silence voices like mine, like Sankara, like Lumumba. He paused for a moment. His face grew heavy at those names. He said, "The dream of your people is not dead. You are not forgotten. We are many. We are coming." That last line, that was the one that seemed to break something open in him. He whispered it again. "You are not forgotten." That's when I saw it clearly. This man, who had been locked away, cut off from his people, treated like he didn't matter anymore, and now he knew someone out there still believed in him. Not just anyone, but a young African leader with power, soldiers, and a mission of his own. To someone like Konu, that meant everything. He folded the letter gently and placed it beside him like a sacred thing. For a long time, he didn't say a word. He just stared at the small window above the door, the one that let in a piece of the sky. His eyes stayed fixed there. No anger, no sadness. Just silence, but a new kind of silence. A silence full of thought. I stayed outside his door for a few more minutes, then returned to my post. But my mind was not at peace. I kept thinking about what I had just seen. I had been guarding this man for months. I had seen him walk, sleep, eat, read. But this was the first time I saw him feel something deep and real. Not from news. Not from a lawyer. Not from court. But from a simple letter from a young soldier in another country. That evening, when I passed by his cell again, he called out quietly. "My brother," he said, Do you know why this letter matters? I stopped and listened. Because in this place, they want you to feel forgotten. They want you to believe you are alone. But this letter is proof that our struggle has not died. That we are part of something bigger. He paused again. Then said, if they fear our words this much, then we must keep speaking. I didn't reply. I just nodded and walked away, but his words stayed with me all night. That day, inside a quiet cell in Abuja, a man who many thought was broken got a message from the south. And in that message, he found strength again. The next morning, I arrived early for my shift. The hallways of the DSS facility were still dark. The sound of shoes on tiled floors echoed around, as usual. Nothing had changed on the outside, same heavy gates, same routine checks, same quiet nods between officers. But something had changed inside one of those cells. As I walked past Nnamdi Kanu's section, I slowed down. I didn't mean to, but my feet just moved slower. I wanted to see if that letter from Ibrahim Traoré had done something more than just surprise him. When I reached his door, I noticed the light inside was already on. That was unusual. Most inmates waited until breakfast time to move around. But Konu was sitting cross-legged on the floor, a pen in hand, writing slowly in a small notebook. The same brown envelope from yesterday lay beside him. He didn't even look up at first. He just kept writing like a man trying to capture something important before it vanished. A few minutes later, I passed by again to deliver his morning meal. This time, he looked up and gave me a short nod. Thank you, he said quietly. I had never heard him say that to any of us before. Not because he was rude, no, he was always respectful, but he mostly stayed in his thoughts. This thank you was different. It was calm, firm, peaceful. I placed the food through the slot. Then, without really planning to, I asked, still thinking about the letter, sir. He looked at me for a long second. Then he smiled, just a little. Not thinking, he said. Planning. I didn't know what to say. I stood there awkwardly. Then he continued, almost like he was talking to himself. This letter reminded me that prisons are not walls, they are mirrors. They show you who you really are. If your spirit is weak, the walls crush you. But if your vision is clear, the walls can't stop it. He paused, then added. Traoré is showing Africa what courage looks like. He's young, bold, and not afraid to speak the truth. And now, he has spoken to me. There was silence for a moment. Then Konu picked up the envelope again and opened the letter. He read one line out loud. You may be inside a cell, but your words are still marching across borders. That one line felt like a wave of wind had entered the cell. His voice was soft, but it carried power. Later that afternoon, I heard that he requested writing materials from the lawyers. That wasn't new, he always wrote. But this time, he didn't stop. He wrote page after page, slowly and carefully, like each word had weight. At some point, he stood up, walked to the window, and stared outside. From that small cell window, all you could see was a slice of sky and the top of a tree. But he stood there for a long time, just looking. I could see it in his eyes, he wasn't looking at the tree. He was seeing something beyond it. That evening, right before my shift ended, I passed by one last time. The hallway was quiet. Most inmates were already settling down for the night. But Konu was still awake, sitting in the same spot, the letter still beside him. He called out softly. My friend. I turned back. Yes, sir. He pointed at the envelope. If you ever leave this job, remember this letter. Remember that one day, inside a small prison cell in Abuja, a man found hope again, not from a judge, not from the court, but from another African who refused to forget. I nodded slowly. He continued. That's what this fight has always been about. Not power. Not money. But the right to be heard. To be respected. To build a continent where we don't fear each other, or beg from outside. Then he looked down again, quiet for a few seconds. He seemed deep in thought. Just before I turned to leave, he said one more thing. "Tell the world. Africa is not dead. She is only waking up." That line stayed with me as I walked out of the building, past the gates, and into the warm Abuja night. The traffic, the noise, the city lights, they all looked the same. But something had changed in me too. I had seen strength come from ink on paper. I had seen a man in chains lift his head because of words written from far away. And the signature on that letter, the one that gave him that strength. Captain Ibrahim Traoré.